Remember No Man's Sky and all the hype around it? Unfortunately, I do. Well, on May 25th, a studio by the name of Crane Balls released the early access version of their game Planet Nomads, which has the same concept of No Man's Sky except the whole taking the sales money and running off for 5 months. This game started as a Kickstarter project in 2015 with an alpha starting the following year. While the game is still nowhere near being completed, it's at a stage in its development where it's an actual working product, and far enough along for us to start taking a serious look at it. Will it fall short like No Man's Sky? Let's take a look at it in today's early access. Normally, I really don't like judging early access games because they're not complete products. Their quality can range between a complete game and completely broken, and their place in that spectrum can change depending on what week you pick the game up. In reality, early access games are constantly evolving, and it's very difficult to praise or criticize a game for features that could be changed in a few weeks, which calls for a change in how I review these games. Since I can't argue against a work in progress for not being complete, I'm going to focus on a few different aspects of the game: its general concept, its maturity, and the support of the developers. I'm still going to point out specific things I like and don't like, but I'm not going to throw this game under the bus for minute details. Then, in a few months, I'll come back to this game and discuss its progress and ability to adapt to player feedback in a follow-up. Let's start off by looking at the basic concept of this game. The premise of this game is that you're a scientist that's been dropped off on a random planet, and your goal is to build, explore, and survive. Once you started to thrive on this new frontier, you should start to figure out a way off this planet. Since the game doesn't exist in a vacuum, I'm going to come out and say it. This game basically aims to be what No Man's Sky wanted to be. However, this game tends to focus more on the building and surviving aspects instead of exploring different planets like No Man's Sky tried to accomplish. The downfall of the latter game was that it was too random and too impersonal, to the point that when you explored about 3 planets, it felt like you had seen them all. However, Planet Nomads is focused on exploring your home planet, with the ability for interplanetary space travel lined up in the future. Finding the resources to survive is extremely easy, but finding the resources needed to thrive is a completely different question. The game has a rainbow of biomes that have been wrapped horizontally around the world, with each one carrying rare resources that are needed to craft later items, and different weather patterns that make it harder and harder to survive. Each stripe is spaced far enough apart that everything you need isn't within an arm's reach, and forces you to leave your comfort zone to get upgrades. This focus on purposeful travel is something I love about this game's design. I used to play games like Minecraft, and every one of them was set up so that you never really had to journey far from home to get everything you needed. Every mineral was beneath your feet, and every plant was either in your biome or the one over. This design calls these games to focus more about building an extravagant home on a small part of an infinite world. The lack of a reason for leaving this small area made me eventually bored of these games because it felt like I was doing the exact same thing every playthrough. Things like villages and ender portals in Minecraft made you venture a little further out, but these games were never really built around the concept of exploration. However, Planet Nomads is, and I really enjoy it. If you want to upgrade your suit or build a vehicle, you're going to have to stock up and start walking. The downside to this design, however, is that you might have to walk pretty far, which can get boring really quick. The developers have been playing with the world size, and until they either get the size just right or adjust the biomes to include on one another, this might be a huge turnoff for some. Overall, the concept of this game is extremely solid, and if they can deliver on their promises, Planet Nomads could potentially be a great game. It has the right focus and gameplay that makes it stand out against No Man's Sky and makes it a unique game. However, it's not safe to make a purchase based off of a concept. You can buy at Farmer's Promise for a dozen eggs, but that doesn't guarantee that you're going to end up with 12 not rotten eggs. Since this game is still being worked on, and I can't see into the future, let's look at how far along the game currently is. An early access game's only definition is that it's a game that isn't completely finished, meaning that it could be awaiting some final polish, or it's some indie developer's tech demo. Where does Planet Nomads lie on this spectrum? Somewhere in the middle. For the most part, the core of Planet Nomads is already built. The game runs, the physics work, resources are present and scattered across a complete world, the crafting system exists and is fully functional, bases and vehicles can be built, and the functions of each are mostly working. As Planet Nomads currently stands, it fits the definition of a working game. However, there's features that haven't been added yet, and ones that are present that still need some work. The two biggest missing pieces of this game are multiplayer and interplanetary travel. Multiplayer is only hinted briefly on the Steam page, but will play a huge part in the community that will form around this game. No open world sandbox is complete without multiplayer because it's something that can turn hours of fun into years of fun. There's something about building and fighting with friends that keeps people playing. However, this game is still early in its development, with the developers stating on their Steam page that there's another 1 to 2 years of early access ahead for Planet Nomads. I'm not going to knock this game for lacking such a large and complicated feature in essentially the first % of its development, and I respect that they're focusing on other important things before they start to mess with multiplayer. Interplanetary travel, however, is something that should be expected to appear in at least a rudimentary form in the near future. Craneball's Trello page shows that its focus has been lessened over the past 6 months, but they've said that the system is ready for interplanetary space travel. Hopefully that means we'll be traveling to other planets reasonably soon. The rest of the game, however, is at a respectable level of maturity. If I could compare it to anything, I would probably compare it to the late alpha or early beta of Minecraft. Planet Nomads is at a point in its development where there's enough of the core content that you can play it for an extended period of time and enjoy it, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. After playing for a little while, I can see where the game still needs to be optimized and tweaked to look good while running smoothly. My desktop's a little dated, but I saw some points where the game struggled at things my computer was completely capable of, like rendering new terrains. This game isn't that graphically intensive, and I can't think of a solid reason why I wouldn't be able to play it at a decent frame rate and graphics setting. I'm not too worried because it's still early enough that resource bugs are common, but it's still something that needs to be nipped early on. I can also see where a lot of systems currently exist but are still in very rudimentary forms. There's a lot of mechanical components that require electricity, and while they work, the generators are worthless in their current state. Both the biomass and uranium generators, the latter of which runs on a resource that is not present in the game, doesn't require any fuel and runs perpetually, and sends electricity wirelessly. The developers seem to be aiming to resolve this within the next few updates, but it paints a picture of what most of the game is like. The core of the game is there, but there's still a lot of polish left before it's a finished product. The crafting system is there, but it still needs some more stuff added and tweaked. The hunger and thirst systems are there, but they need a bit more added to them before they feel complete. The building system, while extremely solid, needs a lot more items to feel full. Planet Nomads has a lot of things in it, but it needs more variety before it feels complete. Now, while these are criticisms of the game at the current point, I have a good feeling that these problems and tweaks will definitely come about before this game leaves early access. From the forum posts, blogs, and videos that they've been posting, the developers appear to be committed to working through this game and finishing it. As far as I could see, patches have come out, on average, every week and a half to 2 weeks, with full patch notes and places for feedback. There's games that follow the same timeline, but there's been a few early access games that went months without an update. Even though it's nothing special, it's still a really good sign when looking at early access games. To see developers patching on a consistent basis means that they're definitely working on the game. However, we'll have to see if that keeps up in the coming months. In the future, what I want to see from Planet Nomads is an increase in depth. There's a lot of good features in the game, but I'd like to see them more fleshed out. For example, the multi-tool. I think at some point the multi-tool should be split into a tool and a weapon, and customization should continue from there. It'd be cool to see a couple different types of weapons to form from it, while keeping the tool fairly simple. This would give the armory a little bit more purpose, instead of just being a linear upgrade system. I also like that you have to create components for the upgrades, and I want to maybe see some modules or something that exists between the marks. Also, it'd be nice to be able to create different types of vehicles in the future, especially some sort of harvester. They're playing around with the idea of mobile fortresses, and this game would be a lot better if they put a stronger focus on vehicles at some point, and keeps them from being an add-on. Now, the million-dollar question. Is this game worth picking up today? Well, that depends on what you're looking for. If you're wanting to play an almost complete game where you can join your friends and hop planet to planet building bases, then you're gonna have to wait a while. If you're looking for a decent planet exploration and building game that doesn't drop off after several hours, then you might want to come back in a couple months. However, if you just enjoy walking around a pretty planet and building the occasional base or vehicle and not expecting too much, then you should be able to have a good time at this point. Planet Nomads is certainly a good concept. It works well for the most part. However, being a good concept and a good product are two different things. Will it be another No Man's Sky? Only time will tell. In a few months, we'll look at how this game progresses in our follow-up episode of Early Access X.